Jade Mitchell clutched the worn straps of her diaper bag tightly as her 18-month-old twins squirmed in their double stroller. She stared up at the gleaming 60-story headquarters of Paragon Industries, its glass exterior reflecting the morning sunlight almost blindingly. At 24, with barely enough money to cover next month's rent and struggling to find stable work while caring for 2 toddlers alone, she hadn't expected to be here today. But the email from HR Director Marcus Chun requesting her presence for an interview had arrived 3 days ago, a surprising response to an application she'd submitted weeks ago and nearly forgotten about. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "We can do this," she whispered to Emma and Ethan, who blinked up at her with matching hazel eyes. She smoothed down her only interview-appropriate outfit, a navy blazer with slightly frayed cuffs over a simple white blouse and black pants that had seen better days. The twins were dressed in the cleanest clothes she could manage, though Emma had already managed to smudge something purple on her sleeve. Jade knew she didn't belong among the polished professionals striding purposefully through the revolving doors, barely sparing her a glance as they chatted into wireless earbuds or tapped on sleek phones. But this opportunity, whatever came of it, could change everything. The story of how Paragon Industries had even considered her application still bewildered her. 2 weeks ago, she'd been working as a barista at a downtown café, twins in tow. Because her babysitter had canceled last minute, her manager had been understanding, this once allowing the twins to stay in their stroller behind the counter during her shift. It had been going fine until a rush hit, and in her haste to fill orders, she'd accidentally spilled an entire caramel macchiato on a customer's expensive-looking suit. The man had been livid, demanding to see the manager, ranting about incompetence and unprofessionalism while pointing at the twins as evidence of her unsuitability for the job. Her boss had initially apologized profusely before the man's tirade became increasingly personal. "It's just coffee," her manager had finally said, voice firm. "Accidents happen, and she's working 2 jobs while raising twins alone. Cut her some slack." The customer had gone quiet, studying her with intense gray eyes before leaving without another word. Jade had watched him climb into a sleek black Tesla with a driver, certain she'd never see him again. Now somehow she was here, invited personally to Paragon Industries for an interview that seemed too good to be true. The position administrative assistant in their community outreach division paid more than both her current jobs combined, with benefits that included childcare assistance. It was exactly what she needed, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that there had to be some mistake. Taking a deep breath, Jade maneuvered the double stroller toward the revolving doors, immediately realizing her error. The compartment was barely wide enough for a single person, let alone a woman with a double stroller. She hesitated, looking around for an alternative entrance, when a security guard approached with a frown. "Ma'am, you'll need to use the accessible entrance around the side," he said, gesturing vaguely to his right. Jade's face flushed. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I have an interview, and interview with who?" The guard's tone carried clear disbelief as he looked her up and down, his gaze lingering on the twins, one of whom had started fussing. "Marcus Chun in HR. I'm Jade Mitchell." Her voice came out stronger than she felt, pride refusing to let her be intimidated. The guard checked his tablet, eyebrows rising in surprise. "Wait here," he instructed before stepping away to make a call. Emma began to cry in earnest now, her wails echoing in the cavernous lobby. Jade knelt, fishing out a pacifier from the diaper bag when a commanding voice cut through the noise. "Is there a problem here?" Jade looked up to see a tall man in his late 30s with salt and pepper hair and sharp features, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Something about his face seemed vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place it. "Sir, This woman claims to have an interview with Mr. Chun, the guard explained. I was just verifying. She does, the man interrupted. Mr. Chun is waiting. He turned to Jade. Ms. Mitchell, I presume? I'm Daniel Archer. The name hit her like a physical force. Daniel Archer CEO of Paragon Industries, the youngest person ever to make the Fortune 500 list, notorious for his exacting standards and ruthless business acumen. And she'd spilled coffee all over his suit 2 weeks ago. You, she whispered, mortification washing over her. A faint smile touched his lips. Me. He gestured toward the large glass doors to the right of the revolving entrance. Shall we? Before she could respond, Ethan chose that moment to throw his stuffed elephant to the floor with a squeal. As both Jade and Daniel reached for it simultaneously, Emma's crying intensified. The security guard moved to assist just as a group of tourists stopped to take photos of the building's famous lobby sculpture, effectively blocking the path to the side entrance. Perhaps we should just... Daniel gestured to the revolving doors, which were momentarily empty. Preparing and narrating. This story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The stroller won't fit, Jade protested, but Daniel was already collapsing it with surprising efficiency, hoisting it under one arm while gesturing for her to pick up the twins. After you, he said, holding the door with his free hand. Juggling. Both squirming toddlers, Jade stepped into the revolving compartment, immediately realizing it was going to be a tight fit with Daniel joining them. His tall frame pressed close to her back as he squeezed in, the stroller awkwardly angled between them. The door began its rotation, and then stopped. Halfway between outside and inside, the revolving door jammed with a grinding noise. Jade clutched the twins tighter as Emma let out a startled cry. Daniel reached past her to push against the door, but it remained stubbornly immobile. It's stuck, he stated unnecessarily, his breath warm against her ear in the confined space. What do we do? Jade asked, trying to comfort Emma while keeping Ethan from wriggling out of her grip. Daniel shifted, attempting to create a few inches of space between them, but the movement only seemed to make things more awkward. Security will override it, he said, nodding toward the guard who was now speaking urgently into his radio. Minutes stretched uncomfortably as they remained trapped in the glass compartment. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, some openly staring, others pretending not to notice the CEO of Paragon Industries wedged in a revolving door with a young woman and 2 crying infants. I'm sorry about this, Jade murmured, mortification. Burning her cheeks. First I ruin your suit, now this. About that, Daniel said, his voice surprisingly gentle. Is that why you think you're here? Because of what happened at the café? Before she could answer, Ethan reached out and grabbed Daniel's tie, tugging it with surprising strength. Jade gasped in horror, but Daniel merely chuckled, gently extracting the expensive silk from the toddler's grip. He has good taste, he commented. It's Hermes. The absurdity of discussing designer accessories while trapped in a revolving door with 2 increasingly restless toddlers struck Jade, and a laugh escaped her before she could stop it. To her surprise, Daniel laughed too, the sound unexpectedly warm. The moment was broken by the arrival of 3 security guards and a maintenance worker, all looking concerned as they assessed the situation. One of the guards, a stern-looking woman with cropped gray hair, immediately took charge. Mr. Archer, are you all right? She called through the glass. Fine, Margaret, Daniel replied. Just a mechanical issue, I assume. We'll have you out. In a moment, sir, the maintenance worker assured him, already removing a panel near the door's base. Jade shifted uncomfortably, very aware of the spectacle they were creating. Emma had settled somewhat, sucking on her pacifier, but Ethan was growing increasingly restless, his small face reddening with frustration. Here, Daniel said suddenly, extending his arms. Let me take him before your arms give out. Hesitantly, Jade transferred Ethan to Daniel's unexpectedly capable hands. The CEO adjusted the child with practiced ease, bouncing him slightly in a soothing rhythm. Ethan, surprisingly, stopped fussing, fascinated by the stranger's watch and tie clip. "You've done this before," Jade observed, relieved to have only one child to manage. Something flickered across Daniel's face, a shadow of emotion quickly masked. "I have a niece," he said simply. The maintenance worker called out a warning just before the door gave a sudden jerk and began moving again. As they completed the rotation into the lobby, a wave of cool air hit them, along with the realization that quite an audience had gathered: employees, security personnel, and curious visitors, all watching the unusual scene unfold. Margaret, the security chief, approached immediately. "Mr. Archer, we apologize for the inconvenience. If you'll come with me, we can—" "It's fine, Margaret," Daniel interrupted, still holding Ethan, who was now contentedly playing with his tie clip. "Ms. Mitchell has an appointment with HR. Please escort her to Marcus's office." He carefully transferred Ethan back to Jade, who was struggling to keep Emma from grabbing at a potted plant. "And have someone bring her stroller up," he added, handing the collapsed equipment to a nearby security guard. The female guard looked bewildered, but nodded. "Of course, sir." Daniel turned to Jade, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Chun will explain everything. I look forward to speaking with you afterward." With that, he strode away, leaving Jade standing in the middle of the massive lobby, twins in arms, feeling as though she'd stumbled into some alternate reality, where CEOs helped with strollers and got trapped in revolving doors with single mothers. "This way, ma'am," Margaret said, her tone professional but eyes curious as she led Jade to the elevators. The ride to the 35th floor was silent except for the twins' occasional babbles. Jade tried to collect her thoughts, wondering what exactly awaited her. Was this elaborate setup some kind of payback for the coffee incident? Was she about to be humiliated, or was there something genuine behind this unexpected interview? Margaret led her through a maze of sleek corridors to a glass-walled office where a middle-aged Asian man with kind eyes and a neat beard waited. "Miss Mitchell," he greeted her, rising from behind his desk. "I'm Marcus Chun, HR Director. Please, come in." He gestured to a comfortable seating area rather than the more formal chairs in front of his desk. "Would the little ones like some juice? Water for you, perhaps?" Jade blinked at the unexpected consideration. Water would be great. "And yes, juice for the twins, if it's not too much trouble." Marcus smiled, pressing an intercom button to make the request before joining her in the seating area. A security guard arrived with her stroller, followed shortly by an assistant bearing drinks and a plate of cookies that immediately captured the twins' attention. "I imagine you have questions," Marcus began once the twins were settled with their snacks in the stroller. "Several," Jade admitted. "Starting with why I'm really here. This can't actually be about the administrative assistant position." Marcus studied her thoughtfully. "Actually, it is. Your application was quite impressive: degree in social work, experience with nonprofits, excellent references from your volunteer work at the women's shelter." "But it was submitted weeks ago," Jade countered. "I never heard anything until 3 days ago, and then I literally ran into your CEO." "The timing is coincidental," Marcus acknowledged, "but not as you might think." He leaned forward. "Ms. Mitchell, are you familiar with Paragon's Community Futures Initiative?" Jade shook her head. "It's a new program, Daniel's personal project. We're creating comprehensive support systems for single parents' childcare, flexible work arrangements, educational opportunities." He gestured toward the twins. "Parents like you." Hope fluttered dangerously in Jade's chest, but she tamped it down. "And you need an administrative assistant." "We need someone who understands the challenges firsthand," Marcus corrected. "Your application was in our system, but frankly, it had been overlooked." until Daniel specifically asked if we had any candidates who were single parents. After the café incident, Jade stated flatly. Marcus's expression turned puzzled. What café incident? Before she could explain, the office door opened, and Daniel Archer himself entered. The twins immediately perked up, Ethan bouncing excitedly at the sight of his brief playmate. Sorry to interrupt, Daniel said, though he didn't look particularly apologetic. I wanted to check that everything was proceeding smoothly. His eyes met Jade's. And to apologize properly for the door malfunction. Not your fault, Jade murmured, still trying to process everything Marcus had told her. Daniel turned to Marcus. Have you explained the position? Just starting to, Marcus replied, rising. I'll give you a moment. He exited discreetly, closing the door behind him. Daniel took the seat Marcus had vacated, his tall frame looking almost comically large in the modern armchair. Up close, without the distraction of being physically pressed against him in a revolving door, Jade could see the fatigue lines around his eyes, the slight dishevelment of his otherwise perfect appearance. You don't remember me from the café, do you? She asked abruptly. He blinked, then a slow smile spread across his face. The caramel macchiato incident? Of course I do. You were furious, she reminded him. I was having a terrible day, he countered. Board meeting gone wrong, investors threatening to pull out, and then a hot beverage down my favorite suit. He shrugged. Not my finest moment. And now you're offering me a job out of what guilt? Daniel's expression turned serious. No, after I left, I thought about what your manager said. About you working 2 jobs while raising twins alone. He glanced at Emma and Ethan, who were happily demolishing cookies. It reminded me of someone. And it made me think about the Community Futures Initiative differently. How so? We've been approaching it from a corporate perspective: metrics, outcomes, PR value. His voice took on an edge of frustration. But we've been missing the human element, the practical realities. When Marcus mentioned your application, with your background in social work and your personal experience, it seemed serendipitous. Jade stared at him, trying to reconcile this thoughtful man with the angry customer from the café. So the revolving door. Complete coincidence, he assured her with a faint smile. Though rather symbolic, perhaps. Symbolic? Of how easy it is to get stuck between worlds. Wanting to move forward, but finding yourself trapped by circumstances beyond your control. He gestured to the twins. They're beautiful, by the way. How old? 18 months, Jade replied automatically. Their father left when I was 6 months pregnant. When he found out, it was twins. The admission slipped out before she could stop it, and she immediately regretted sharing such personal information. But Daniel merely nodded, unsurprised. The position pays $85,000 annually, full benefits including comprehensive health care, and access to our on-site child care center. He nodded toward a window through which a colorful playground was visible on a lower floor's rooftop garden. Hours are flexible, with options to work from home when needed. The amount made Jade's head spin. It was more than triple what she currently earned between her 2 jobs. That's very generous. It's market rate for someone with your qualifications, he corrected. We're not offering charity, Miss Mitchell. We're offering an opportunity for both of us. Emma chose that moment to let out a squeal, dropping her cookie and pointing imperiously at Daniel. Before Jade could react, he leaned forward, picking up the cookie and offering it back with a solemnity that made the toddler giggle. I should warn you, Jade said, watching the interaction, that if you hire me, there will be days when childcare falls through, when one of them is sick, when things don't go according to plan. I'm counting on it, Daniel replied, surprising her. That's exactly the perspective this initiative needs: real-world complications, not theoretical problems. He stood, straightening his jacket. Marcus will take you through the details if you're interested. The position is yours if you want it." As he moved toward the door, Jade found her voice. "Why?" she asked, needing to understand. "Why me?" Really? There must be dozens of qualified single parents who applied. Daniel paused, hand on the doorknob. For a moment, he seemed to debate something internally. Then he turned back, his expression softer than she'd seen it yet. "My sister was a single mother," he said quietly. "She worked 3 jobs trying to make ends meet. No support, no flexibility, no understanding from employers. She died in a car accident 2 years ago, falling asleep at the wheel after a double shift." His gaze shifted to the twins. "My niece is with my parents now. She's 4. The revelation hung in the air between them, changing everything Jade had assumed about this man and his motives. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Daniel nodded once, his composure restored. The Community Futures Initiative was supposed to be her legacy, something that would help other parents avoid her fate. He met Jade's eyes directly. "So you see, Ms. Mitchell, this isn't about charity or guilt or even that coffee incident. It's about creating something meaningful, something necessary." With that, he left, the door closing softly behind him. Jade sat motionless, overwhelmed by the unexpected turn her life had taken in the span of an hour. From struggling single mother to potential program administrator. From spilling coffee on an angry customer to being offered a lifeline by that same man, now revealed to have depths and motivations she couldn't have imagined. Emma tugged at her sleeve, offering a half-eaten cookie with sticky fingers. Jade accepted it with a smile, her mind racing with possibilities. Part of her wanted to run. This was too good to be true, too convenient, too much like a fairy tale. But another part, the part that had been fighting so hard for so long, desperately wanted to believe. Marcus returned, tablet in hand. "So," he said, taking in her expression, "shall we discuss the details?" Jade looked at her twins, their faces smudged with chocolate, blissfully unaware of how this day might change their future. Then she straightened her shoulders and nodded. "Yes," she said firmly. "Let's talk details." As Marcus began explaining the position's responsibilities, benefits package, and start date options, Jade couldn't help glancing toward the door where Daniel had disappeared. The man was an enigma, part demanding CEO, part grieving brother, part visionary. And somehow, inexplicably, their paths had crossed twice now, first in conflict, then in this strange alignment of needs and opportunities. Whether it was fate, coincidence, or simply good, business sense remained to be seen. But sitting in the plush office of Paragon Industries, watching her twins happily occupied and hearing about a job that sounded tailor-made for her skills and situation, Jade allowed herself something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The security chief, Margaret, appeared at the door as Marcus was finishing his explanation of the company's parental leave policy. Her expression was professional, but there was an undeniable curiosity in her eyes as she glanced at Jade and the twins. "Mr. Chun, Mr. Archer has requested that Ms. Mitchell and her children join him for lunch in the executive dining room once you've concluded your meeting." Marcus looked surprised but nodded. "Of course. We're nearly finished here." He turned to Jade. "Unless you have more questions?" Jade's mind was swimming with information, possibilities, and cautious optimism. "Just one," she said, glancing at the twins who were growing restless after sitting still for so long. "When would I start?" "Monday," Marcus replied without hesitation. "We can process your paperwork today if you accept the position. 5 days from now." The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. No notice period for her current jobs, no time to second-guess or overthink, just a headlong dive into a new life. Jade took a deep breath. "I accept," she said, the words sending a thrill of both fear and excitement through her. Marcus smiled broadly. "Excellent. Welcome to Paragon Industries, Ms. Mitchell." He offered his hand, which she shook firmly, Now, let's not keep Mr. Archer waiting. Margaret will show you to the dining room while I start the onboarding process." As Jade gathered the twins and their seemingly endless accessories, maneuvering the stroller toward the door, Marcus added casually, "You know, in the 3 years I've worked directly with Daniel, I've never known him to invite a new hire to lunch." Before Jade could respond to this revelation, Margaret was ushering them toward the elevators again. The security chief remained professionally distant, but as they rode up to the 58th floor, she finally spoke. "You made quite an impression," she said, eyes forward on the elevator doors. "By getting trapped in a revolving door?" Jade asked wryly. Margaret's lips twitched. "That, and whatever you said to him afterward. Mr. Archer has been different since his sister passed. More driven, but less connected. Today was the first time I've seen him hold a child since his niece's last visit." She glanced at Ethan, who was contentedly gumming a teething toy. "And certainly the first time I've seen him laugh in months." The doors opened before Jade could process this information, revealing a reception area that led to what was clearly an exclusive dining room. Through glass walls, she could see about a dozen people seated at various tables, all in expensive suits, all radiating an aura of power and privilege. Daniel was waiting in the reception area, his earlier fatigue seemingly erased. He'd changed his suit jacket, she noticed, and his tie was different, still expensive looking, but in a shade of blue that brought out his eyes. "Miss Mitchell." He greeted her, then smiled at the twins. "And the younger Mitchells, thank you for joining me." He gestured toward the dining room. "I hope you don't mind, but I've taken the liberty of ordering in advance. Children this age aren't known for their patience at mealtimes." The consideration startled her again. "That's very thoughtful. Thank you." As Margaret held the door, Daniel himself took control of the stroller, guiding them to a corner table that offered both privacy and a spectacular view of the city. High chairs had already been prepared, and to Jade's astonishment, appropriate finger foods for toddlers were arranged on small plates: cut grapes, soft cheese cubes, tiny sandwiches without crusts. "You've thought of everything," she murmured as he helped her transfer the twins to their high chairs. "Not me," he admitted. "I asked our head chef what his grandchildren like to eat at this age." He settled into his chair, seemingly oblivious to the curious glances from other diners. "I hope Marcus explained everything clearly." "You seem to have reached an agreement." "I start Monday," Jade confirmed, helping Emma with her food while keeping an eye on Ethan's precarious grip on his sippy cup. "Excellent." Daniel's genuine pleasure at her acceptance was evident. "The Community Futures Initiative has been stalled for months. Your perspective will be invaluable." A server appeared with their meals, a simple but elegant salad for Jade, and what looked like perfectly cooked salmon for Daniel. As they ate, their conversation flowed surprisingly easily, moving from the practical aspects of the initiative to broader topics about social support systems and the challenges facing working parents. The biggest issue, Jade found herself explaining between bites and intermittent interventions with the twins, isn't just childcare costs, though those are crippling. It's the inflexibility of traditional work structures. If your child gets sick, if school closes unexpectedly, if the babysitter cancels, your entire day collapses, and most employers have zero tolerance for that kind of disruption. Daniel listened intently, occasionally making notes on his phone. "And your solution would be? Flexibility above all. Remote work options when possible. Emergency childcare services on site." She gestured around the building. A company this size could easily justify the investment, and the return in employee loyalty and productivity would be substantial. "Exactly what I've been trying to convince the board," Daniel said with satisfaction. "They understand the PR value but not the human impact." As lunch concluded, Emma began showing signs of needing a nap, her eyes drooping as she fussed in her high chair. Ethan, meanwhile, had discovered that dropping his spoon made an interesting noise and was conducting enthusiastic experiments with gravity. "I should get them home," Jade said, gathering their things. "They're overdue for naps and I've already taken up too much of your time." Daniel nodded, signaling for the check. "Of course. I'll have my driver take you." "That's not necessary. It's company policy for new hires," he interrupted smoothly. "Consider it your first experience with Paragon's employee benefits." As they made their way back to the elevators, twins settled in their stroller with the telltale heaviness of approaching sleep. Daniel maintained a respectful distance that nonetheless felt protective rather than aloof. In the main lobby, he instructed Margaret to escort them to the car waiting at the private entrance, avoiding another encounter with the revolving door that had brought them together so unexpectedly. At the sleek black SUV with tinted windows, Daniel surprised her by personally helping load the stroller into the trunk, while the driver secured 2 car seats that had mysteriously appeared. "Those aren't," Jade began. "We keep them on hand for visiting families," Daniel explained. "Safety first." As the twins were securely fastened and Jade prepared to enter the vehicle herself, Daniel handed her a business card. "My direct line," he said quietly. "If you have any questions or concerns before Monday or after." Jade accepted the card, noting it contained not just an office number but a cell phone as well. "Thank you for everything." He nodded once, stepping back as the driver closed her door. Through the window, she watched him return to the building, a solitary figure against the gleaming glass backdrop of Paragon Industries. As the car pulled away, Jade looked down at the sleeping faces of her children, then at the business card in her hand, and finally at the receding image of the corporate tower in the rear window. In the span of a few hours, her entire world had shifted axis, all because of a spilled coffee, a malfunctioning revolving door, and a CEO with hidden depths and unexpected motivations. Whatever Monday would bring, whatever challenges and opportunities awaited, one thing was certain: life would never be the same again. And for once, that thought filled her not with anxiety, but with something that felt remarkably like anticipation. The weekend passed in a blur of preparations and nervous anticipation. Jade terminated her positions at the café and her evening data entry job, packed professional clothes she hadn't worn since before the twins were born, and arranged for her neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez to watch Emma and Ethan until Monday afternoon, when she would pick them up from her new workplace's childcare center. Monday morning arrived with the chaotic energy that accompanied any major change involving toddlers. Despite waking 2 hours early, Jade barely made it out the door on time, arriving at Paragon Industries with just minutes to spare before her 8:30 a.m. start. The same security guard who had questioned her days earlier now nodded respectfully, directing her to the HR department where Marcus Chen waited. "Good morning, Ms. Mitchell," he greeted her warmly. "Ready for your first day?" Jade smoothed her slightly wrinkled blazer, a relic from her pre-twins' professional life. "As ready as I'll ever be." The morning proceeded with standard onboarding paperwork, ID badge photos, system access setups, and a building tour that left Jade's head spinning with information. By lunchtime, she was installed in a surprisingly spacious office on the 45th floor, complete with views of the city park and equipment. Far nicer than anything she'd worked with before. "This is where the Community Futures team will be based," Marcus explained as he showed her the surrounding area. "We're still recruiting other positions, but you'll be the first official team member aside from the director." "Who's the director?" Jade asked, arranging family photos on her new desk, the twins at their first birthday, a candid shot of them napping that always made her smile. Marcus hesitated. "That's still being determined. For now, you'll report directly to Mr. Archer." The revelation sent a jolt through her. Directly to the CEO? That seems unusual for an administrative position. "This initiative is Mr. Archer's personal project," Marcus reminded her. He's very invested in its success. Before Jade could process this information, her phone rang the internal line she'd just been assigned. Heart racing, she answered with what she hoped was professional composure. "Jade Mitchell speaking, Ms. Mitchell." Daniel Archer's voice was unmistakable even through the phone line. "I hope your first morning has gone smoothly?" "Yes, thank you. Everyone's been very helpful." "Excellent. I'd like you to join a meeting in the executive conference room at 2 o'clock, 10th floor, North Wing. We'll be discussing the initiative with potential corporate partners." Jade's grip tightened on the receiver. "Today, but I've barely had time to review the program materials." "That's precisely why I want you there," Daniel replied. "Your fresh perspective will be valuable. Bring your initial impressions of the proposal documents Marcus provided." The line disconnected before she could formulate a response. Jade stared at the phone, then at the stack of folders on her desk that she'd barely skimmed. "Something wrong?" Marcus asked from the doorway. "Mr. Archer wants me in an executive meeting at 2, she said faintly. "With corporate partners." Marcus's eyebrows rose. "On your first day? That's unexpected." "Is it a test?" Jade asked bluntly. "Am I being set up to fail?" "No," Marcus said after a moment's consideration. "That's not Daniel's style. If he invited you, he genuinely wants your input." He checked his watch. "You have just under 2 hours. I'd suggest focusing on the executive summary and the proposed implementation timeline." Jade spent her lunch hour hunched over the documents, eating a sandwich at her desk while making notes on glaring issues she identified immediately. By 1:50 p.m., she had filled a legal pad with observations and questions, many centered on practical concerns that the polished proposal seemed to overlook entirely. The executive conference room was intimidating, all dark wood and leather chairs surrounding a massive table. When Jade arrived, several people were already seated, engaged in pre-meeting small talk. Their conversations died down as she entered, curious eyes assessing her presence. Daniel stood at the head of the table, deep in conversation with an older man whose expensive watch and commanding presence screamed investor. He looked up as Jade hesitated in the doorway, gesturing her forward. "Ms. Mitchell, right on time. Please join us." He indicated a chair to his immediate left, a position of prominence that caused several eyebrows to raise around the table. As she took her seat, Daniel made introductions. "Everyone, this is Jade Mitchell, who's just joined us to help shape the Community Futures Initiative." Ms. Mitchell brings both professional expertise in social services and valuable personal perspective as a single parent. The older man Daniel had been speaking with studied her with sharp eyes. "Thomas Blackwood, Blackwood Ventures," he introduced himself. "We're considering a significant investment in this initiative. Daniel speaks highly of your insights." Jade managed a polite nod, wondering exactly what Daniel had told these people about her. The remaining attendees introduced themselves executives from potential partner companies, Paragon's own CFO and legal counsel, and a woman named Vanessa Powell who was introduced as the director of the Paragon Foundation, the company's philanthropic arm. "Now that we're all here," Daniel began, "let's discuss the proposed structure for Community Futures. As you know, our goal is to create a comprehensive support system for working parents, particularly single parents, that addresses the practical realities they face daily." The meeting proceeded with presentations about funding models, PR opportunities, and implementation timelines. Jade listened carefully, growing increasingly concerned as the discussion focused almost exclusively on metrics, tax benefits, and brand enhancement opportunities. When Daniel finally turned to her, asking for her initial impressions, she hesitated only briefly before diving in. "The financial and PR frameworks are impressive," she began diplomatically, "but I have concerns about the implementation strategy." "Such as?" Thomas Blackwood prompted. "For starters, the child care model proposed is impractical for most working parents," Jade said, pointing to specific sections in the documentation. Standard hours of 9 to 5 don't account for varying shift work, overtime, or commute times. And the illness policy requiring parents to pick up children within an hour of any fever would create exactly the employment instability this initiative aims to prevent. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Jade pressed on, highlighting additional issues: inadequate emergency backup care options, overly restrictive eligibility requirements, insufficient accommodations for children with special needs. Essentially, she concluded, this looks excellent on paper, but fails to address the messy realities of parenting while working. It's solving the problem as executives imagine it, not as parents experience it. The silence that followed felt oppressive. Jade's heartbeat thundered in her ears as she wondered if she'd just committed career suicide on her very first day. Then Daniel Archer did something unexpected. He smiled. This, he said, gesturing to her notes, is exactly why Ms. Mitchell was brought onto this project. He turned to the others. We can design the most financially sound program in the world, but if it doesn't address the actual needs of the parents we're trying to help, it's worthless. Thomas Blackwood studied Jade with new interest. What would you change, Ms. Mitchell? For the next 30 minutes, Jade outlined a revised approach: flexible hours for the child care center, emergency in-home care options for sick children, graduated return-to-work programs for new parents, and transportation assistance for families without reliable vehicles. As the meeting concluded, the energy in the room had shifted noticeably. What had begun as a standard corporate discussion had transformed into something more innovative, more human-centered. Several executives approached Jade afterward, offering business cards and invitations to continue the conversation. Daniel remained at the head of the table, observing these interactions with an expression Jade couldn't quite interpret. When the room had cleared except for the two of them, he finally spoke. That went even better than I expected. Jade gathered her notes, suddenly exhausted from the adrenaline crash. You expected me to tear apart the proposal on my first day, in front of potential investors? I expected you to be honest, he corrected, and you were. It could have backfired spectacularly. Daniel shrugged, the gesture surprisingly casual for someone so typically composed. Sometimes the greatest risk is taking no risk at all. Jade studied him, trying to reconcile the various versions of this man she'd encountered: the angry customer, the trapped CEO, the grieving brother, and now this strategist who had apparently gambled on her candor. Why didn't you warn me? She asked. Would you have spoken so freely if I had? He countered. Or would you have filtered your thoughts, trying to say what you believed I wanted to hear? The insight was uncomfortably accurate. Jade had spent years learning to modulate her voice, to make herself smaller and less demanding in professional settings. The directness she displayed today was something she usually reserved for advocating for her children. You manipulated the situation, she realized. I created an environment where your authentic perspective could emerge, he corrected, gathering his own materials. The difference is subtle but significant. Before she could respond, his phone rang. Glancing at the screen, his expression shifted to concern. I need to take this. We'll continue this discussion tomorrow. He paused at the door. By the way, you might want to check on your children. I believe they're settling into the child care center this afternoon. With everything that had happened, Jade had nearly forgotten that today was the twins' first day at Paragon's child care facility. She checked her watch. 3:30 p.m. They would have arrived an hour ago. Go, Daniel said, noting her expression. The rest of this can wait until tomorrow. The child care center occupied the entire third floor of the building, a thoughtfully designed space with areas for different age groups, a small indoor playground, and large windows that filled the rooms with natural light. When Jade arrived, slightly breathless from rushing, she found Emma and Ethan happily engaged in a sensory play activity with several other toddlers. Ms. Mitchell, the center director greeted her warmly. Your little ones are doing wonderfully. They settled in after just a few minutes of adjustment. Relief washed over Jade as she watched her children content, safe, engaged in an environment she could never have afforded on her previous salaries. They seem happy, she murmured. They are, the director assured her. You can visit any time during the day. Many parents come down for lunch with their little ones. Another benefit Jade hadn't even considered, the ability to see her children during the workday rather than being separated for 10 to 12 hours at a stretch. The realization brought unexpected tears to her eyes, which she quickly blinked away. I'm just finishing some paperwork, she explained. I'll be back to pick them up at closing time. As she turned to leave, she nearly collided with Vanessa Powell, the Paragon Foundation director from the meeting earlier. Sorry, Jade apologized, stepping back. I didn't see you there. Vanessa smiled thinly. Clearly, her gaze drifted past Jade to the playroom where the twins were visible through a large window. Your children? Yes, Emma and Ethan. Twins, how challenging that must be for you. Something in her tone carried a note of judgment rather than sympathy. They're a blessing, Jade replied automatically, the standard response she'd developed to similar comments over the years. Vanessa's smile remained fixed. Of course. I understand you made quite an impression in the meeting today. I just shared my perspective. Yes, Daniel mentioned you had a unique viewpoint. Vanessa adjusted her designer blazer, a movement that seemed calculated to draw attention to its obvious quality compared to Jade's more modest attire. I've been overseeing the Foundation's family initiatives for 3 years now. I'm sure we'll be working closely together. The statement sounded more like a warning than a welcome. Before Jade could respond, Vanessa continued. In fact, I'm hosting a dinner at my home this weekend for key team members and potential donors. Saturday at 7. Daniel suggested I extend an invitation to you as well. The invitation caught Jade off guard. That's very kind, but I don't have childcare on weekends. Bring them, Vanessa said, though her expression suggested the opposite of her words. It's a family-friendly environment. My son will be there, he's 5. Trapped, Jade nodded. Thank you, I'll be there. Vanessa provided her address, an exclusive neighborhood that Jade had only ever driven through, never visited, before departing with another artificial smile. The encounter left Jade unsettled as she returned to her office. Something about Vanessa's manner suggested she viewed Jade not as a colleague, but as an interloper, someone who didn't belong in the rarefied air of Paragon's executive level. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of orientation activities and initial project work. By the time Jade collected the twins and headed home, she was physically and emotionally exhausted. The day had been a roller coaster, from the nervous energy of starting a new job to the high-stakes meeting, from the validation of Daniel's approval to the subtle hostility from Vanessa. As she bathed the twins that evening, listening to their happy babbling and watching them splash in the tub, Jade wondered what she had gotten herself into. This new world of corporate politics and power dynamics was foreign territory. Yet the opportunity it represented for her family was undeniable. The next morning, Jade arrived at Paragon to find a sleek laptop and tablet had been delivered to her office overnight, along with a note in Daniel's distinctive handwriting. Tools for the job. No need to be tethered to your desk. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, allowing her the flexibility to work from different locations, including potentially from home when needed, was not lost on her. The day proceeded with meetings and introductions to other team members who would be supporting the initiative. By afternoon, Jade had begun to feel more oriented, less like an imposter in this corporate environment, and more like someone with valuable contributions to make. She was reviewing budget projections when a knock at her door revealed Margaret, the security chief, her expression professionally neutral. Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Archer would like to see you in his office. Jade gathered her tablet and notes. Did he say what it's regarding? No, Margaret replied. But he's had 3 calls from the Blackwood team today, all after their CEO returned from yesterday's meeting. The information was clearly meant as a helpful heads-up, though Margaret's expression revealed nothing. Jade thanked her, wondering about the relationship between the stern security chief and Daniel Archer that allowed for such discretion and subtle support. Daniel's executive suite was as impressive as she remembered from her initial visit, though this time she approached it with slightly more confidence. His assistant, a poised young man named James, ushered her in immediately. Daniel was standing at the window, phone to his ear, but gestured for her to enter. As she settled into a chair opposite his desk, she caught fragments of what was clearly a tense conversation. "Understand your concerns, Thomas, but I stand by the decision. Yes, we need her perspective precisely because it challenges conventional approaches. No, that's not negotiable." He ended the call, turning to Jade with a slightly rueful expression. "Thomas Blackwood has opinions about yesterday's meeting." "Negative ones, I assume," Jade said, tension coiling in her stomach. "I'm sorry if I don't apologize," Daniel interrupted, taking his seat. Blackwood was impressed. So impressed, in fact, that he wants you to present the revised concept to his entire investment team next week. Jade blinked. "Me? But I've been here 2 days. Surely Vanessa or someone from your executive team would be better suited." "Vanessa knows philanthropy and PR," Daniel said dismissively. "You know the actual lived experience of the people we're trying to help. That's what." Blackwood responded to your authenticity. The praise was unexpected and oddly touching. "I don't have presentation experience at this level," Jade admitted. "We'll get you support for the technical aspects," Daniel assured her. "But the content, the vision, that needs to come from you." He leaned forward slightly. "Can you do this?" The question hung between them, weighted with implication. This wasn't just about a presentation. It was about Jade stepping into a role far beyond what she'd initially been hired for, becoming a public face for an initiative that clearly meant a great deal to Daniel personally. "I can," she said finally, surprising herself with her certainty. "But I'll need complete access to all existing research and proposals. And I want to talk to actual single parents, not just those in professional roles, but hourly workers, gig economy workers, parents with special needs children." Daniel nodded, seemingly pleased by her conditions. "Done. Whatever resources you need, they're yours." He paused, studying her with that intense gaze that seemed to see more than she intended to reveal. "There's something else you should know." "What's that?" "Vanessa was supposed to be leading this initiative," he said carefully. "She's been developing it for nearly a year." The revelation explained Vanessa's frosty reception. "And now you're having me present to Blackwood instead of her." Vanessa's approach wasn't working, Daniel said simply. The initiative was stalled, becoming increasingly disconnected from its original purpose. Your arrival has created an opportunity for recalibration. "You've made an enemy for me," Jade observed, not accusingly but matter-of-factly. Daniel's expression turned grimly amused. "I suspect Vanessa's dinner invitation wasn't extended out of collegial warmth?" "Not exactly," Jade confirmed. "Should I decline?" "No," he said after a moment's consideration. "Go, observe, learn who your allies might be." He stood, signaling the end of their meeting. "Corporate environments can be treacherous, Miss Mitchell. Not everyone values directness as I do." As Jade rose to leave, a framed photograph on his credenza caught her eye, a little girl with Daniel's gray eyes, laughing as she rode on his shoulders. His niece, she presumed, the daughter of his late sister. Daniel followed her gaze, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "Lily," he said quietly. "She's why this matters." The simple statement contained volumes about his motivations, his personal investment in the initiative's success, his willingness to challenge corporate conventions to achieve something meaningful. "I won't let you down," Jade promised, surprised. By her own fierce determination, or Lily? Daniel held her gaze for a long moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "I know you won't," he said finally. "That's why you're here." Saturday evening arrived with unexpected complications. Ethan had developed a slight fever, meaning Jade had to decide whether to cancel her appearance at Vanessa's dinner or risk bringing a potentially cranky toddler to an already tense social situation. After monitoring him throughout the day and seeing his temperature normalize, she opted to attend, packing an emergency bag with medicine, extra clothes, and quiet toys to manage any unforeseen issues. Vanessa's home was exactly what Jade had expected, a sprawling modern mansion in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, with manicured grounds and a circular driveway filled with luxury vehicles. As their rideshare pulled up to the imposing entrance, Jade felt woefully out of place despite her careful outfit selection, a simple but elegant navy dress she'd purchased years ago for a college friend's wedding. "Remember," she whispered to the twins as she unbuckled them from their car seats. "Best behavior tonight." Emma blinked solemnly while Ethan, recovered from his fever but still slightly subdued, clutched his favorite stuffed elephant. A uniformed housekeeper answered the door, eyebrows rising slightly at the sight of the twins, before directing them to the main living area where conversation and soft music flowed. The space was impeccably decorated in creams and golds, with artwork that Jade suspected cost more than her annual salary adorning the walls. Vanessa spotted them immediately, gliding over in a designer dress that emphasized her willowy frame. "Jade, you made it," she said, air-kissing her cheek. "And you brought both children." Her smile tightened as she glanced at Ethan's stuffed toy. "Thank you for including us," Jade replied evenly. "Your home is beautiful, isn't it? Architectural Digest featured it last spring." Vanessa turned toward the room. "Let me introduce you to everyone. My son Brandon is upstairs with the nanny. I'll have her take your twins as well." Before Jade could respond that she preferred to keep the children with her, at least initially in the unfamiliar environment, Vanessa was summoning a young woman who efficiently whisked the twins toward the staircase. Emma went willingly, curious about the new surroundings, but Ethan glanced back at Jade with uncertainty. "It's okay," Jade reassured him, though her own instincts protested the separation. "Mommy will be right here." The next hour was a carefully orchestrated social minefield. Vanessa introduced Jade to various guests, primarily Paragon executives, board members, and potential donors to the Community Futures Initiative. Each introduction came with a subtle reminder of Jade's outsider status. "Jade just joined us from..." Where was it again? Oh yes, a café and data entry position. Or, "Jade brings a unique perspective as she's actually lived the struggles our initiative addresses." Despite the undercurrent of condescension, Jade maintained her composure, engaging thoughtfully with guests who seemed genuinely interested in the initiative's goals. Several executives from partner companies asked insightful questions about her vision for the program, and she found herself deeply engaged in conversation about practical implementation challenges with a woman who ran a successful tech company while raising 3 children as a single mother. "Vanessa mentioned you're presenting to Blackwood Ventures next week," the woman, Catherine Zhang, remarked. "That's quite an opportunity for someone so new to Paragon." "It's somewhat intimidating," Jade admitted, "but I believe in the potential of this initiative to create meaningful change." Catherine studied her with interest. "Daniel must see something special in you. He doesn't typically elevate new employees so quickly." Before Jade could respond to this observation, a commotion from the staircase drew everyone's attention. The nanny was descending rapidly, Ethan wailing in her arms, his face flushed and teary. "I'm so sorry," the young woman apologized, looking distressed. "He started crying for his mother and wouldn't stop. And he feels warm again." Jade moved quickly to take her son, pressing her lips to his forehead. The fever had indeed returned, his skin hot against hers. "It's okay, buddy. she murmured, holding him close. "Mommy's here." Vanessa approached, her expression a mixture of concern and annoyance. "Is everything all right? He's not contagious, is he? Brandon is upstairs." "It's probably just teething," Jade said, though she suspected it was more than that. "I should take him home. Where's Emma?" "Still upstairs. She's playing quite happily with Brandon," the nanny reported. Jade hesitated, torn between keeping her children together and disrupting Emma's rare opportunity for play with another child. Ethan burrowed against her neck, whimpering softly. "I can have my driver take you home," offered a familiar voice from behind her. Daniel Archer stood in the doorway to the living room, his tall frame commanding immediate attention. Unlike the other male guests in traditional evening wear, he wore a more casual ensemble dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that somehow looked equally appropriate for the upscale gathering. His unexpected appearance created an immediate shift in the room's energy. Conversations paused, guests straightened almost imperceptibly, and Vanessa's expression cycled rapidly through surprise, calculation, and deliberate warmth. "Daniel," she exclaimed, moving toward him. "I didn't think you'd make it tonight." "I had a meeting nearby," he replied, his attention focused on Jade and Ethan. "Is he all right?" "Fever," Jade explained, shifting Ethan's weight in her arms. "He had one earlier today that seemed to break, but it's back." Daniel nodded, his expression concerned. "You should get him home." "I'm heading out anyway. Let me give you a ride." "That's not necessary," Jade began, conscious of the watching crowd. "It's no trouble," Daniel insisted. "And it looks like he needs his bed," Vanessa interjected smoothly. "What about Emma?" "She's upstairs with Brandon." Jade's dilemma must have shown on her face, because Catherine Zhang stepped forward. "I can bring your daughter home later if you like," she offered. "I was planning to leave in about an hour, and I live in Westbrook Heights, the neighborhood adjacent to Jade's more modest apartment complex." The unexpected kindness from a virtual stranger brought a lump to Jade's throat. "That would be amazing." "Thank you." With arrangements made for Emma and apologies offered to Vanessa, who accepted them with brittle graciousness, Jade found herself following Daniel to a sleek Audi parked in the circular drive. He opened the back door, revealing a car seat already installed. "You have a car seat?" Jade asked, surprised, as she settled Ethan into it. "I keep one for when Lily visits," Daniel explained, closing the door gently once Ethan was secure. "She's older, but it's the right size for him." The revelation that the CEO of Paragon Industries personally drove his niece around rather than relegating the task to staff was unexpectedly touching. As they pulled away from Vanessa's mansion, Ethan's whimpers subsided, the motion of the car already lulling him toward sleep despite his discomfort. "I'm sorry about this," Jade said, breaking the silence. "I debated not going when he had a fever earlier, but it seemed to resolve." "Kids get sick," Daniel replied simply. "It happens." "What did you think of Vanessa's gathering?" The abrupt change of topic caught Jade off guard. It was informative. Daniel glanced at her, amusement flickering across his features. "Diplomatically put." "I met some interesting people," Jade elaborated. Catherine Zhang seemed genuinely invested in the initiative. Others were clearly there for the networking opportunity rather than the cause itself. "And Vanessa? How was she as a host?" Jade chose her words carefully. "Attentive. She made sure to introduce me thoroughly to everyone, including your background as a café worker and struggling single mother?" Daniel asked, his tone neutral but eyes sharp in the brief moment they met hers in the rearview mirror. "You know about that. Margaret keeps me informed," he admitted. "Security is everywhere at these functions." The revelation that Daniel had eyes and ears at the dinner even before his arrival was unsettling. "Why didn't you tell me you would be there?" "I wasn't certain I could make it," he said. and I was curious how Vanessa would handle your presence. Without anticipating mine, Jade studied his profile in the dim light of the car. You're using me to test her. I'm giving her an opportunity to demonstrate her commitment to the initiative's true purpose, he corrected. So far, she's failing. They drove in silence for several minutes, the sleeping city passing by in a blur of lights and shadows. Ethan had fallen asleep, his breathing still slightly labored, but his expression peaceful. Why are you doing this yourself? Jade finally asked, driving us home. You must have a dozen people who could handle this. Daniel was quiet for so long that Jade thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard before. After my sister died, Lily stayed with me for several months while my parents were settling the estate and making arrangements. She was barely not much older than your twins. One night she spiked a fever of 104. I'd faced billion-dollar negotiations without breaking a sweat, but seeing that tiny burning face. He shook his head. Nothing in my life had prepared me for the fear I felt. Jade nodded, understanding completely. The first time the twins got sick, I was terrified. I called the pediatrician at 3 in the morning. I took Lily to the, Daniel admitted with a self-deprecating smile. Turned out to be a standard ear infection. The doctor gave me a crash course in childhood fevers and sent us home with instructions to alternate Tylenol and ibuprofen. The image of Daniel Archer, formidable CEO, pacing a hospital waiting room with a feverish toddler humanized him in a way that all their previous interactions hadn't quite managed. You were a good uncle, Jade said softly. I tried to be, he replied. I still try, though weekend visits aren't the same as those months we had together. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror again. So yes, I could have sent a driver. But some things you do yourself because they matter. They arrived at Jade's apartment building, a modest but well-maintained complex that stood in stark contrast to the neighborhood they'd just left. Daniel insisted on carrying the sleeping Ethan while Jade gathered their things, following her to her third-floor unit without comment about the narrow stairwell or the sounds of various televisions filtering through thin walls. Her apartment was small but meticulously organized, with colorful educational toys neatly stored in bins and children's books arranged on low shelves. What the space lacked in luxury, it made up for in warmth. Family photos adorned the walls. Handmade artwork was proudly displayed on the refrigerator, and soft lighting created a cozy atmosphere. His room is this way, Jade said, leading Daniel to the small bedroom the twins shared. 2 toddler beds with matching blue and pink bedding occupied opposite walls, with a nightlight casting gentle stars across the ceiling. Daniel carefully placed Ethan on his bed, stepping back as Jade removed his shoes and covered him with a light blanket. She placed a kiss on his forehead, relieved to find it cooler than before. The fever's breaking again, she whispered, leading the way back to the living room. Thank you for your help. Daniel nodded, glancing around the apartment with undisguised curiosity. His attention lingered on a framed degree from State University Bachelor of Social Work, awarded to Jade 4 years earlier. You never mention your education, he observed. It rarely seems relevant in my daily life, Jade replied, suddenly self-conscious about her modest home being scrutinized by someone who owned a penthouse in the city's most expensive building. Would you like some coffee, tea? Coffee would be great, Daniel accepted, settling onto her worn but comfortable sofa. When did you graduate? Just before finding out I was pregnant, Jade explained, measuring coffee into the small machine. I had accepted a position with a non-profit organization working with at-risk youth. When the twins' father left and I realized I'd be doing this alone, I had to reevaluate. The non-profit salary wasn't enough to support 3 people, and the hours were unpredictable. So you took more stable, flexible jobs instead, Daniel concluded, sacrificing your career path for practical necessities. Many parents make similar choices, Jade said, placing a steaming mug in front of him. It's one of the issues I hope community futures can address, creating career paths that accommodate parenting responsibilities without forcing impossible choices. Daniel sipped his coffee, expression thoughtful. That's why your perspective at Vanessa's dinner was so valuable. Most of those people have never had to choose between career ambitions and keeping their children fed and housed. Including you? Jade asked boldly. Including me, he acknowledged without defensiveness. My privilege is something I'm acutely aware of, especially since Megan's death. It was the first time he'd mentioned his sister by name, Jade realized. Tell me about her, she requested softly, if you don't mind. Daniel set down his mug, his gaze distant. Megan was brilliant. Graduated top of her class in environmental engineering. She had job offers from major firms, but chose to work for a non-profit focused on clean water initiatives in underserved communities. Pride colored his voice. Always the idealist, even when it meant struggling financially. Lily's father? A colleague at the non-profit. He was married, though Megan didn't know that initially. When she discovered the truth and told him about the pregnancy, he denied responsibility and threatened legal action if she pursued paternity claims. The parallels to Jade's own situation were striking. And you tried to help her. Too late, Daniel said, regret evident in his tone. I was focused on Paragon's expansion in Asia, traveling constantly. By the time I realized how desperate her situation had become, she was working multiple jobs, exhausted, and struggling to afford basic prenatal care. His hands tightened around the coffee mug. I offered help, then money, a place to live, whatever she needed. But Megan was stubborn, proud. She accepted minimal assistance, insisted on maintaining her independence. The accident happened when she was driving home from a night shift, Jade supplied, remembering what he'd told her previously. Daniel nodded. Fell asleep at the wheel. Crossed the median. She was 7 months pregnant. The clinical description couldn't mask the pain still evident in his voice. After that, I promised myself I would create something meaningful from the tragedy, a system that might have saved her, that might save others facing similar circumstances. The revelation of his personal connection to the initiative deepened Jade's understanding of his investment in its success. This wasn't just a corporate PR exercise or tax write-off for Daniel. It was a memorial to his sister, a way to channel grief into purposeful action. The presentation to Blackwood, Jade said, connecting pieces. That's why it matters so much. Blackwood's investment would allow us to scale the initiative beyond Paragon, to create a model other companies could adopt, Daniel confirmed. It's the difference between helping dozens of families and helping thousands. A key turned in the lock, interrupting their conversation. Catherine Zhang entered with a sleeping Emma in her arms, looking momentarily startled to find Daniel still present. Sorry for the intrusion, she said quietly. She fell asleep in the car. Daniel rose immediately, taking Emma from Catherine with the same care he'd shown with Ethan. I'll put her down, he offered, disappearing into the twins' bedroom without waiting for a response. Catherine raised an eyebrow at Jade. He's full of surprises, isn't he? Increasingly so, Jade agreed, thanking her for bringing Emma home. It was no trouble, Catherine assured her. And it gave me a chance to observe the dynamics at Vanessa's dinner after you left. She lowered her voice. Watch your back with her. She was not pleased that Daniel left to drive you home. The warning was delivered with genuine concern rather than malicious gossip. Jade appreciated the straightforward approach. I gathered our professional relationship might be challenging. Challenging is diplomatic, Catherine replied with a wry smile. Vanessa has been positioning herself to be more than Daniel's philanthropy director for years. Your sudden prominence in his pet project threatens both her professional ambitions and her personal ones. The implication was clear, and Jade felt her cheeks warm. It's not like that, He's my boss." Catherine's expression was knowing but kind, perhaps. "But the way he looks at you isn't the way most bosses look at their employees." She glanced toward the bedroom where Daniel had taken Emma. "Just be careful. Corporate politics are complicated. Enough without adding personal entanglements." After Catherine departed, promising to connect about the initiative further, Jade found Daniel standing in the twins' doorway, watching the sleeping children with an expression of such tenderness. It made her heart constrict. "They're beautiful," he said softly as she joined him. "You've done an amazing job with them." "I've done my best," Jade replied. "It hasn't always been enough, but they're happy, healthy, and loved." "That's more than enough," Daniel assured her, his gaze meeting hers with unexpected intensity. "It's everything." Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of shared values, of mutual respect that transcended their professional roles. Daniel's phone buzzed, breaking the connection. He checked it with a frown. "Problem?" Jade asked. "Just work," he said, returning the phone to his pocket. "I should go. You need rest before Emma and Ethan wake up, and I have early calls with our Asian offices." At the door, he paused. "About the Blackwood presentation, I've scheduled prep sessions with our communications team starting Monday. But the vision, the heart of it." He met her eyes directly. "That's all you, Jade, your experiences, your insights. That's what will make this succeed." The use of her first name didn't escape her notice. "I won't let you down," she promised. For the second time that week, and meant it even more deeply now. "I know," he replied simply. Then, with a nod that somehow conveyed more than words, he was gone, leaving Jade standing in her doorway with the distinct sensation that her life had irrevocably changed course, not just professionally, but personally. As well, as she prepared for bed, checking on the twins one last time and finding both sleeping peacefully, Jade reflected on the evening's revelations. Daniel Archer was far more complex than his public persona suggested. A powerful CEO driven by private grief, a devoted uncle trying to honor his sister's memory, a privileged man genuinely attempting to understand and address struggles he hadn't personally experienced. And somewhere in the middle of it all was Jade herself, navigating not just a new career opportunity, but an unexpected connection with a man whose world couldn't be more different from her own. The challenges ahead were daunting. Vanessa's evident hostility, the high-stakes presentation to Blackwood, the delicate balance of professional obligations and parental responsibilities. Yet for the first time in years, Jade felt not just hopeful but purposeful. The Community Futures Initiative wasn't just a job. It was a chance to create the support system she and countless other parents desperately needed. And in Daniel, she'd found not just an employer but an ally who understood the profound importance of that mission. Tomorrow would bring new complications, she was certain. But tonight, with her children sleeping safely nearby, and the memory of Daniel's quiet confidence in her abilities still fresh, Jade allowed herself to. The week leading up to the Blackwood presentation transformed me in ways I had not anticipated. Under Daniel's guidance, I worked with Paragon's top communications specialists, learning to translate my passionate convictions into persuasive corporate language without losing their essential authenticity. Each evening I returned home exhausted but exhilarated, sharing stories of my day with the twins. During bath time, stories they could not understand but responded to with infectious giggles that renewed my determination. By Thursday afternoon, I stood in a practice room facing a panel of Paragon executives who had volunteered to play the role of skeptical investors. My presentation had evolved from tentative to commanding my natural empathy, now balanced with data-driven analysis that even the most numbers-focused executives found compelling. "Impressive," commented Paragon CFO after my final practice run. "You have managed to make this both financially sound and genuinely moving. That is rare. The emotional appeal is certainly strong. but investors like Blackwood want reassurance about implementation timelines and scalability, which the third section addresses thoroughly. Jade has found the perfect balance. His unwavering support had become a cornerstone of my growing confidence. Throughout the week, Daniel had maintained a careful professional distance in public settings, while finding moments to offer private encouragement. A text message late at night, praising a revised slide, a coffee waiting on my desk with a simple note reading, "You have got this," a quick check-in about Ethan's recovery from his fever, a word of advice. The Blackwood team will be looking for weakness. Do not mention your personal situation unless directly asked. It makes you appear unprofessional, like you are seeking sympathy rather than investment. Jade, do you have a moment? There is someone I would like you to meet. In the hallway, a petite elderly woman with Daniel's gray eyes waited, holding the hand of a small girl with dark pigtails who was bouncing excitedly in place. "Jade, this is my mother, Eleanor Archer, and my niece Lily. They are in town for the weekend." And Lily insisted on seeing where Uncle Danny works. "Are you Uncle Danny's friend? He talks about you on the phone." Lily, remember what we discussed about private conversations. "Mom, Lily, this is Jade Mitchell. She is leading our Community Futures Initiative, the program for mommies and daddies who need help, like my mommy needed. Daniel has told us about your work, Miss Mitchell. It means a great deal to our family. Please call me Jade, and it is an honor to be part of the initiative. Your son has created something truly special. With your help, I understand. Daniel mentioned you have children. Twins Emma and Ethan. They are 18 months old. 2 babies. Can I meet them? I am good with babies. Grandma says I am a helper. Perhaps that could be arranged. They would love a big girl to play with. Mom, why do not you and Lily wait in my office? I need a quick word with Jade about tomorrow's presentation. Sorry about the ambush. Lily has been asking about the lady with the twins since I mentioned helping you when Ethan was sick. It is fine. They are lovely. Your mother seems wonderful." She is. She and my father have been raising Lily since Megan's death. They moved to Arizona for my father's health, but they fly in every few months. They are actually the reason I wanted to speak with you. They will be here through the weekend, and Lily was hoping to have a playdate with your twins. Perhaps Sunday at the park near your apartment. If you are comfortable with that, of course. That sounds lovely. The twins would enjoy the company. Great. I will text you to coordinate details. You should head home and rest. Tomorrow is a big day. Friday morning dawned clear and bright, a perfect October day that felt symbolic of new beginnings. I dressed carefully in a tailored burgundy suit, purchased with my first Paragon paycheck, professional without being unapproachable, the color bringing warmth to my complexion and confidence to my bearing. The Blackwood Ventures headquarters occupied the top floors of a downtown high-rise, its reception area, a statement of understated wealth with rare woods, museum-quality art, and sweeping views of the city. I arrived with Daniel and a small team from Paragon, my presentation materials meticulously prepared, my nerves carefully controlled. "Miss Mitchell, I have been looking forward to hearing more about your vision for Community Futures." The boardroom contained 15 people, Blackwood's investment team, analysts, and several representatives from companies already in their portfolio. Daniel sat at one end of the table, his presence a steady anchor as I took my position at the front of the room. For 90 minutes I guided them through my presentation, outlining not just the initiative structure and financial projections, but the human impact it would create. I shared stories collected from single parents across different industries and socioeconomic backgrounds, illuminating common challenges that transcended income levels while acknowledging the particular urgency for lower-wage workers. What sets Community Futures apart, I explained nearing my conclusion, is its comprehensive approach. This is not just about childcare, though that is a critical component. It is about creating employment structures that recognize parenting as a Valuable social contribution rather than an inconvenient liability. The upfront investment is substantial. What metrics will determine success beyond standard ROI calculations? Retention rates for parent employees, productivity improvements, recruitment advantages. But also more human metrics, health outcomes for children in the program, educational achievement, parental well-being. We believe these factors ultimately translate to financial returns through reduced turnover, decreased healthcare costs, and enhanced company reputation. Question after question came, each more detailed than the last, testing not just my knowledge of the proposal, but my conviction in its value. Through it all, I remained poised, authentic, and thoroughly prepared, the combination of my lived experience and Daniel's mentorship creating a compelling advocacy that even the most skeptical investors seem to appreciate. Impressive work, Ms. Mitchell. You have given us much to consider. She is everything you said she would be, Archer. We will be in touch early next week with our decision. In the elevator descending from Blackwood's offices, the Paragon team buzzed with cautious optimism. Daniel stood beside me, his proximity sending an awareness through me that had nothing to do with professional boundaries. You were extraordinary. Whatever Blackwood decides, you should be incredibly proud. His praise meant more than it should have, warming me from within. Thank you for believing I could do this. I never doubted it, he replied simply. Back at Paragon headquarters, the team dispersed to their respective offices, the adrenaline of the presentation giving way to Friday afternoon fatigue. Jade was gathering her things to pick up the twins from childcare when her office phone rang. Jade Mitchell, she answered distractedly, searching for her car keys. Ms. Mitchell, this is Margaret. The security chief's voice carried an unusual tension. Could you come to the executive floor immediately? There's a situation developing that requires your attention. Something in Margaret's tone sent alarm bells ringing. What kind of situation? It's best discussed in person, Margaret replied cryptically. Please hurry. The executive floor was unnaturally quiet when Jade arrived, the usual bustle of assistants and executives replaced by a hushed tension. Margaret met her at the elevator, her normally impassive face tight with concern. What's happening? Jade asked, anxiety mounting. Vanessa Powell has called an emergency board meeting, Margaret explained, leading her toward the boardroom. She's making allegations about the Community Futures Initiative and your role in it. Jade's stomach dropped. What allegations? That's what we're about to find out, Margaret replied grimly. Daniel asked me to bring you in. Normally, someone at your level wouldn't attend a board meeting, but given the circumstances. The boardroom door loomed before them, voices audible from within, one raised in what sounded like heated accusation, another responding with controlled intensity that Jade recognized as Daniel's. Margaret paused, hand on the door. Whatever happens in there, remember that you have allies. Not just Daniel. The unexpected statement of support from the typically reserved security chief bolstered Jade's resolve as they entered the room. Inside, Paragon's board of directors, 12 men and women whose combined influence shaped industries across the globe, sat around the massive table. Daniel stood at one end, his posture rigid with barely contained tension. Opposite him, Vanessa was mid-sentence, a folder of documents spread before her. Clear conflict of interest, she was saying as Jade entered. Personal entanglement compromising business judgment, diverting company resources for. She broke off, noticing Jade's arrival. Well, how convenient. The subject of our discussion has joined us. Daniel's eyes met Jade's briefly, conveying both warning and reassurance. Ms. Mitchell was invited at my request, he stated firmly. Since you've chosen to make accusations concerning her, she deserves the opportunity to respond directly. The board chairman, a distinguished older man named Richard Hargrove, gestured for Jade to take a seat. Ms. Powell has raised serious concerns about the Community Futures Initiative and your involvement with it, Ms. Mitchell, as well as certain irregularities in Mr. Archer's behavior since your hiring. Vanessa smiled thinly, sliding a document toward the chairman. I've compiled a timeline of events that should concern every member of this board. Miss Mitchell, a woman with no corporate experience, is hired after a chance encounter with our CEO. Within days, she's presenting to major investors, accessing confidential company information, and receiving unprecedented personal attention from Daniel. She turned to the board. While the concept behind Community Futures is admirable, the implementation has become dangerously compromised by emotional decision-making rather than sound business strategy. Furthermore, the resources being diverted to this initiative, particularly Daniel's time and focus, are disproportionate to its potential value to Paragon. The accusation hung in the air, its implication clear. Daniel's judgment had been clouded by personal interest in Jade, compromising his fiduciary responsibility to the company. Before Jade could process the shock of these allegations, Vanessa continued, her voice taking on a note of regret that rang false to Jade's ears. I've worked with Daniel for years and have the utmost respect for his leadership, which is why his recent behavior has been so concerning. Leaving corporate functions to drive Ms. Mitchell home personally, spending evenings at her apartment, planning social outings with their children. A murmur ran through the board members, several exchanging troubled glances. Jade felt heat rise to her face, not from embarrassment, but from anger at how Vanessa had twisted innocent interactions into something inappropriate. Daniel stepped forward, his voice controlled but edged with steel. If you have something specific to allege, Vanessa, state it plainly instead of trafficking in innuendo. Very well, Vanessa replied coolly. I believe you have allowed personal feelings for Ms. Mitchell to cloud your judgment regarding Community Futures. I believe you have fast-tracked her into a position of influence without proper vetting or qualifications. And I believe this constitutes a misuse of company resources and a betrayal of your obligations as CEO. The room fell silent, the accusation hanging heavily in the air. Jade's heart hammered against her ribs, shock giving way to a burning indignation. Before Daniel could respond, she rose to her feet, drawing all eyes to her. May I address the board? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Chairman Hargrove nodded, studying her with curious eyes. Please do, Miss Mitchell. Jade took a deep breath, centering herself in the truth of her experience. I understand how the situation might appear from the outside, particularly when presented as selectively as Miss Powell has done. But there are critical facts missing from her narrative. She turned to face the board directly, meeting each member's gaze in turn. Yes, I met Daniel Archer by chance when I spilled coffee on him while working as a barista. Yes, I was hired shortly thereafter, but through standard HR protocols, based on my application that had been in your system for weeks. And yes, I was quickly integrated into the Community Futures initiative because my educational background in social work and lived experience as a single parent provided exactly the perspective the stalled program needed. Vanessa scoffed. Convenient timing. Serendipitous timing, Jade corrected firmly. But not unprecedented in business, where recognizing unexpected talent and opportunity is considered vision, not impropriety. She gestured to the portfolio she'd carried from her office. The presentation we delivered to Blackwood Ventures today wasn't the product of favoritism or inappropriate influence. It was the result of rigorous preparation, data analysis, and strategic thinking supported by an entire team of Paragon professionals who can attest to the process. Gaining confidence, she continued. As for the personal interactions Miss Powell has characterized as inappropriate, yes, Daniel drove me home when my son was ill. Yes, he has shown kindness to my children. These actions reflect the very values Community Futures aims to promote understanding that employees are whole people with responsibilities beyond the workplace. She looked directly at Vanessa. What's most troubling about these allegations isn't their implication about my relationship with Daniel, which has been nothing but professional. It's the underlying suggestion that a single mother from a modest background couldn't possibly have earned a position of responsibility through merit alone. That my presence here must be the result of something inappropriate rather than my qualifications and perspective. Several board members shifted uncomfortably at this direct challenge to unconscious biases they might harbor. Jade pressed her advantage. Community Futures isn't just a corporate initiative, it's a statement about values. About recognizing that traditional workplace structures often force impossible choices on parents, particularly women. About acknowledging that diversity of experience strengthens business decision-making rather than compromising it. She gestured toward Vanessa. Ms. Powell's concerns about resource allocation are valid questions for any business initiative. But they should be evaluated based on potential return, both financial and social, not on suspicion about the motivations of those involved. Chairman Hargrove leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. What would you say to the concern that your rapid advancement within Paragon is unusual and potentially indicates preferential treatment? I'd say that innovation often requires unusual approaches, Jade replied without hesitation. Daniel recognized that Community Futures needed someone with first-hand understanding of the challenges it aims to address. My path here may be unconventional, but my contributions are substantive and measurable. She reached into her portfolio, extracting copies of the presentation materials from that morning. These aren't the work of someone who gained their position through inappropriate means. They represent hundreds of hours of research, consultation with experts across multiple fields, and rigorous financial analysis. As the board members accepted the materials, examining them with professional interest, Daniel spoke for the first time since Jade had begun her defense. I'd like to add that Thomas Blackwood called me immediately after our presentation today, he said quietly. His team was unanimously impressed, not just with the initiative structure, but with Ms. Mitchell's command of both human and financial aspects. They're prepared to commit $20 million in initial funding, with potential for up to $50 million as the program scales. The announcement sent a ripple of surprise through the room. Blackwood's reputation for caution and thoroughness made such a rapid decision highly unusual. Vanessa's composure slipped momentarily, her strategy clearly derailed by this development. The funding is welcome news, she recovered quickly, but doesn't address the fundamental concerns about process and propriety. I believe it speaks directly to the quality of Ms. Mitchell's work and the initiative's merit, Daniel countered. But if the board has concerns about my judgment or conduct, I'm prepared to recuse myself from direct oversight of Community Futures, appointing a board committee to evaluate progress and decisions. The offer, made without hesitation, carried weight with the directors. Chairman Hargrove nodded thoughtfully. A reasonable compromise. Perhaps Miss Powell could serve on such a committee, given her expertise in our philanthropic endeavors. Vanessa's smile was brittle. I would welcome the opportunity to ensure the initiative maintains proper alignment with Paragon's broader goals. For the next 30 minutes, the board discussed the initiative structure, Blackwood's investment, and oversight mechanisms, the conversation shifting from accusations of impropriety to practical implementation questions. Jade contributed where appropriate, her concise answers and evident expertise gradually winning nods of approval from even the most skeptical directors. As the meeting concluded, Chairman Hargrove addressed Jade directly. Ms. Mitchell, thank you for your candor today. The board is satisfied that your role in Community Futures is appropriate and valuable. We look forward to seeing the initiative develop under the expanded oversight committee we've established. Turning to Daniel, his expression grew more measured. While we find no evidence of impropriety, perception matters in our position. I trust you'll maintain appropriate professional boundaries as this project moves forward. The gentle admonishment was delivered with respect rather than censure, acknowledging Daniel's otherwise impeccable judgment while establishing clear expectations. Daniel accepted it with a gracious nod, his relief at the outcome evident despite his controlled exterior. As the board members filed out, several paused to introduce themselves to Jade properly, their initial skepticism replaced by collegial interest. Vanessa departed without further comment, her tactical defeat complete, but her resentment palpable in the rigid set of her shoulders. When only Daniel, Jade, and Margaret remained, the security chief spoke first. "I'll wait outside, in case you need anything further." Her meaningful glance at Daniel suggested she anticipated he might need privacy for the conversation to follow. Alone in the boardroom, Daniel and Jade faced each other across the expanse of polished wood, the tension of the preceding hour giving way to something more complex and unspoken. "I'm sorry," Daniel said finally, genuine regret in his voice. "I never anticipated Vanessa would take things this far." "It's not your fault," Jade assured him, the adrenaline of confrontation gradually subsiding. "She saw me as a threat from the beginning to her professional position, and perhaps to her personal ambitions as well." Daniel's expression confirmed this assessment. Vanessa has wanted more than a professional relationship for some time. "I've made it clear that isn't possible, but she's persistent." The acknowledgement of Vanessa's personal interest in Daniel hung between them, highlighting the very question the board had raised. Was there something more than professional respect developing between Daniel and Jade? "The board's concern isn't entirely misplaced," Jade said carefully, needing to address the elephant in the room. "We should probably be more mindful about boundaries going forward." Something flickered in Daniel's eyes, disappointment, perhaps, or resignation. "Of course, the initiative is too important to risk any appearance of impropriety." "Does that mean Sunday is canceled?" Jade asked, surprising herself with the question that revealed her own priorities more clearly than she'd intended. Daniel studied her for a long moment, his expression softening. "That depends. Is Sunday a professional engagement or a personal one?" The question cut to the heart of their ambiguous relationship. Demanding clarity, neither had been prepared to articulate until Vanessa forced the issue. "Personal," Jade admitted quietly, "at least for me." The smile that transformed Daniel's face was worth the vulnerability of her admission. "For me as well," he confirmed. "Though perhaps we should include my mother as chaperone, to satisfy the board's concerns about propriety." His gentle teasing broke the tension, drawing a laugh from Jade that released the last of her anxiety about the confrontation they'd just navigated. "Lily would be disappointed to miss her playdate," she agreed, gathering her materials. "And the twins have been looking forward to meeting their new friend." As they left the boardroom together, maintaining a professional distance while sharing a private understanding, Jade reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. From a chance encounter in a café to defending herself before a corporate board, from struggling single mother to respected professional. With a $20 million initiative under her guidance, the transformation seemed almost impossible to comprehend. Yet perhaps the most significant change wasn't in her circumstances, but in her perception of what was possible for herself, for her children, and for the countless other parents who might benefit from the work she was now positioned to do. The revolving door that had trapped her with Daniel weeks earlier had indeed been a turning point, though neither could have imagined exactly where it would lead. As they parted in the lobby, Daniel heading to follow-up meetings and Jade to collect her eagerly waiting twins, their eyes met in silent acknowledgement of all that had transpired and all that might yet develop professionally and perhaps, in time, personally as well. The path forward wouldn't be without challenges. Vanessa's defeat today wouldn't end her resistance. The initiative would face implementation hurdles, and balancing career advancement with parental responsibilities would remain a daily negotiation. But for the first time in years, Jade faced these challenges not in isolation, but with meaningful support, purpose, and the stirrings of something that felt remarkably like belonging. In the child care center, Emma and Ethan ran to her with delighted squeals, tiny arms outstretched in absolute trust and love. As she gathered them close, Jade silently renewed her commitment, not just to creating security for her own children, but to building systems that would support all parents in their dual roles as caregivers and contributors. The revolving door that had once trapped her had ultimately set her free, opening to a future of unexpected possibility and promise. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.